Jake Thompson was having a perfectly normal Tuesday morning when everything changed. He was sitting at his kitchen table, drinking coffee and checking emails, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and delivery guys usually just left packages on the porch. When he opened the door, two people in dark suits stood there looking very official. The woman had a clipboard, and the man carried a briefcase. They both wore sunglasses even though it was cloudy outside. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson," the woman said, in a voice that sounded like she was reading from a script. "I'm Agent Davis from the International Student Housing Program. This is my colleague, Agent Williams." Jake scratched his head. "You have the wrong house. I never signed up for any student program." "Actually, sir, you've been selected based on your property size and background check," Agent Williams said, opening his briefcase. "We need to discuss your participation in a very important government initiative." Jake felt his stomach drop. Government initiative? That didn't sound good. "Look, I'm really not interested in whatever you're selling." "This isn't optional, Mr. Thompson," Agent Davis said, still smiling, but her voice got colder. "May we come in?" Something about the way she said it made Jake step aside. These people didn't seem like the type you could just say no to. They walked into his living room and sat down on his couch like they owned the place. Agent Williams pulled out a thick folder. "Your house has been selected to host 3 international students for an indefinite period. The program provides housing for young women who need a safe place to stay while they adjust to life in America." "Wait, what?" Jake said. "I live alone. I like living alone. Don't want roommates, especially not 3 of them." "The monthly compensation is $15,000, Agent Davis said, sliding a paper across his coffee table. Jake's eyes went wide. $15,000. That was more than he made at his job at the tech company. His student loans were crushing him, and his car needed repairs, and his roof had been leaking for months. "But I don't know anything about taking care of international students," he said weakly. "You don't need to know anything special, Agent," Williams said. "Just provide them with a place to sleep and basic meals. They're very independent." Agent Davis pulled out more papers. "If you refuse to participate, we'll have to consider other options. Your property taxes have some irregularities that might require investigation. And there are zoning issues that could affect your ability to live here." Jake felt trapped. These people were basically threatening him, but they were doing it with smiles and official-looking documents. When would they arrive? "Thursday," Agent Williams said. "We'll have everything ready for you by then." 2 days later, Jake was pacing around his house, wondering what he'd gotten himself into. He'd cleaned out his spare bedrooms and bought extra groceries, but he still felt completely unprepared. What if these students didn't speak English well? What if they had weird dietary restrictions? What if they were messy or loud? Right at noon, a black SUV pulled up in front of his house. Jake watched through his window as the same 2 agents got out, followed by 3 young women. The women were unusual. They all looked to be in their early 20s, but there was something different about them. They moved in a strange way, like they were floating instead of walking. They all had long dark hair and pale skin, and they were all wearing identical simple dresses. Jake opened the door before they could knock. "Welcome to my house." The first woman stepped forward. She had bright green eyes that seemed to look right through him. "Thank you for providing us shelter. I am Zara. These are my companions, Lyra and Nova." Her English was perfect, but she spoke like she was giving a formal speech. The other 2 women just nodded and said nothing. "We'll leave you to get acquainted," Agent Davis said. "Remember, Mr. Thompson, these young women are under government protection. Any problems should be reported to us immediately." The agents left, and Jake was alone with his new house guests. The 3 women stood in his living room, looking around like they'd never seen furniture before. "So," Jake said, trying to break the awkward silence, "are you hungry? Thirsty? Do you want me to show you to your rooms?" Zara tilted her head. "Rooms? Yeah, your bedrooms, where you'll sleep." The 3 women looked at each other, and Jake could swear they were having some kind of silent conversation. Then Zara smiled. "Yes, sleep rooms. That would be helpful." Jake showed them upstairs to the 3 spare bedrooms. Each room had a bed, a dresser, and a small desk. The women examined everything very carefully, like they were studying alien artifacts. "Is this how humans rest?" Lyra asked, poking at a mattress. Jake laughed. "Yeah, we sleep on beds. Haven't you ever seen a bed before?" Another one of those silent conversations happened between the three women. Then Nova spoke for the first time. "We are not familiar with American customs." "Right," Jake said. "Well, make yourselves at home. The bathroom is down the hall. Kitchen is downstairs. Help yourselves to anything in the fridge." That first night was weird. Jake made spaghetti for dinner, but the women just stared at it like he'd served them bugs. They ate tiny bites and kept looking at each other with worried expressions. "Is the food not good?" Jake asked. "It is different," Zara said diplomatically. After dinner, Jake went to his room to watch TV, but he kept hearing strange sounds from upstairs. Not talking exactly, but like a low humming noise. When he went to investigate, the sounds stopped immediately. He knocked on Zara's door. "Everything okay in there?" "Yes," came her voice. "We are ... adjusting." Jake went back to his room, but he couldn't sleep. Around midnight, he heard the front door open and close. He looked out his window and saw the three women walking down the street in their nightgowns. They were moving in that weird floating way again. He grabbed his jacket and followed them, staying far enough back that they wouldn't see him. They walked for about 20 minutes to an empty field outside of town. In the field, Jake saw something that made his blood run cold. There were about 20 other people there, all standing in a perfect circle. They were all young women, all wearing the same simple clothes, all with that same pale skin and long dark hair. They were holding hands, and that humming sound was coming from all of them at once. Jake hid behind a tree and watched. The women, including his three house guests, were doing something that looked like a ritual. They were facing the sky, and the humming was getting louder. And suddenly all of them looked directly at where Jake was hiding. He ran home as fast as he could, his heart pounding. When he got back to his house, the three women were already there, sitting calmly in his living room like nothing had happened. "Good evening, Jake," Zara said. We hope we did not disturb your rest." "Where were you?" he asked, trying to catch his breath. "We went for a walk," she said simply. "We enjoy the night air." Jake didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, he tried to act normal, but his mind was racing. Who were these women? What was that ceremony in the field? And why did the government agents seem so interested in keeping them hidden? Over the next few days, things got even stranger. The women never seemed to eat much, but they were always perfectly healthy and energetic. They didn't watch TV or use phones or do any of the normal things people do. Instead, they spent their time staring out windows or having those silent conversations. Jake started paying closer attention to their behavior. He noticed that electronics acted weird around them. His TV would change channels by itself. His phone would get calls from numbers that didn't exist, and his computer would turn on in the middle of the night. He also noticed that the women seemed to know things they shouldn't know. Zara warned him not to take his usual route to work one day, and later he found out there had been a major accident on that road. Nova told him it was going to rain even, though the weather forecast said sunny skies and it poured all afternoon. The weirdest thing was that they never seemed to sleep. Jake would hear them moving around at all hours of the night, but in the morning they looked perfectly rested, and they were always cold to the touch, even on hot days. One morning, Jake decided to do some research. He looked up the International Student Housing Program online and found absolutely nothing. No website, no news articles, no government records. It was like the program didn't exist. He tried calling the number Agent Davis had given him, but it went to a disconnected voicemail. He called the local immigration office, but they had no record of any international students being placed in the area. Jake was starting to realize that whatever was happening in his house, it wasn't what those agents had told him. These women weren't international students. They might not even be human. But the strangest part was that despite all the weirdness, he was starting to care about them. Zara had a way of looking at him that made him feel like she actually saw him, not just as a host, but as a person. And even though Lyra and Nova were quiet, they were always polite and seemed genuinely grateful. For his help, Jake didn't know what he'd gotten himself into, but he was starting to think that finding out the truth might be the most important thing he'd ever do. That night, he made a decision. He was going to confront them and demand some real answers. But as he was getting ready to go upstairs, he heard a cuh. Agent Davis walked into Jake's house like she owned it, not even waiting for him to invite her in. She looked around the living room with sharp eyes, checking every corner like she was searching for something. "How are our guests settling in?" she asked, but her tone made it clear this wasn't really a question. "They single quotes. Fine," Jake said, not sure how much he should reveal. "Very quiet, no problems." The three women came downstairs at that moment, moving in their usual silent way. They stood in a perfect line, like soldiers waiting for orders. "Ladies," Agent Davis said with a fake smile, "trust you're finding everything suitable here?" Zara answered for all of them. Jake has been very accommodating. Agent Davis pulled out a small device that looked like a phone but had strange symbols on it instead of numbers. She pressed a few buttons and it made a soft beeping sound. "Excellent. Remember, integration is the goal. You need to blend in better." Jake noticed the women's faces changed slightly when she said that. They looked scared, or maybe worried. "Mr. Thompson," Agent Davis turned to him, "have you noticed anything unusual? Any strange behaviors or incidents?" Should he tell her about the midnight walks? The weird humming? The way electronics acted up around them? Something told him to keep quiet. "No, nothing unusual," he lied. "They're model house guests." Agent Davis stared at him for a long moment, like she was trying to read his mind. Then she smiled that fake smile again. "Good, we'll be in touch." After she left, Jake noticed the three women seemed to relax a little. Zara actually looked at him with something that might have been gratitude. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not telling her about our evening activities." So they knew he'd been watching them. Jake felt his face get hot. "I was just worried about you guys. It's not safe to walk around alone at night." Nova stepped forward. "We appreciate your concern, but we are not in danger from the things you fear." What's that supposed to mean? The three women did that silent conversation thing again. Then Lyra spoke up. "We will explain when it is safe to do so. For now, please trust us." Trust them? Jake barely knew them, but something about the way they looked at him made him want to believe them. Over the next few weeks, he started paying even closer attention to their behavior. And what he discovered made him question everything he thought he knew about reality. First, there was the food situation. Jake had stocked up on groceries, but the women barely touched any of it. He never saw them eat meals, but they somehow stayed perfectly healthy. One day, he caught Lyra in the garden behind his house, and she was talking to his tomato plants. Not just talking, the plants seemed to be responding, growing taller and greener right in front of his eyes. "How did you do that?" Lyra looked startled, like she'd been caught doing something wrong. "What? Make the plants grow like that?" "I do not understand," she said, but her face said otherwise. Then there was the weather thing. Nova seemed to know exactly what the weather would be like days in advance, even when the meteorologists were wrong. She told Jake to bring an umbrella on what was supposed to be a sunny day, and sure enough, it poured rain. She warned him about a windstorm that the weather service didn't predict until it was already happening. "How do you know these things?" Jake asked her one evening. "I feel changes in the air," she said simply. "Do you not?" "No, I definitely do not." But the strangest thing was what happened with Zara. Jake had been having trouble sleeping since the women moved in, and one night he was tossing and turning, worried about his job and his bills and his weird living situation. Suddenly, he felt incredibly calm and peaceful. All his worries just melted away, and he fell into the deepest sleep he'd had in months. The next morning, Zara looked tired for the first time since he'd met her. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked. "I was helping a friend," she said. Jake started to suspect that these women weren't just unusual, they might not be human at all. But every time he tried to bring it up, it would change the subject or disappear for a few hours. One day, Jake decided to do some detective work. He went through the paperwork Agent Davis had left behind, looking for clues about who these women really were. What he found made his blood run cold. The documents had inconsistencies everywhere. Zara's birth date was listed as 1995, but also as 1987 on another form. Her birthplace was listed as New Geneva, Switzerland, but when Jake looked it up, no such place existed. Lyra's passport showed she was from Northern Scotia, which wasn't a real country. Nova's documents claimed she was from Eastern Polonia, another place that didn't exist on any map. Jake printed out maps and spent hours researching. None of the places mentioned in their paperwork were real. It was like someone had made up fake countries and hoped no one would notice. That evening, Jake confronted them with the evidence. "I know you're not international students," he said, spreading the papers out on the kitchen table. "These places don't exist. So who are you really?" The three women looked at each other, and Jake could practically see them having an argument, without words. Finally, Zara sighed. "We cannot tell you everything," she said, "but you are right. You're not what Agent Davis told you we are. Then what are you?" "We are refugees," Nova said carefully, "from a place very far away." "How far?" Another silent conversation. Then Lyra said, "Farther than you can imagine." Jake felt like he was going crazy. "Are you saying you're not from Earth?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "This is insane," Jake said, running his hands through his hair. "This can't be happening. We understand it is difficult to accept," Zara said gently. "But we are not here to harm anyone. We're here because we have nowhere else to go." "What happened to your home?" "It was destroyed," Lyra said quietly. "Beings who wanted to take everything we had." Jake stared at them. 3 alien refugees living in his house, depending on him for protection. It should have been terrifying, but instead, he felt oddly protective of them. "Are you in danger here?" he asked. "We do not know," Zara admitted. "The people who brought us here promised us safety, but we are not sure we can trust them. Davis and others like her. They say they want to help us, but we think they may have other plans." Jake thought about Agent Davis's cold smile and the way she'd looked around his house like she was cataloging everything. "What kind of other plans?" "We do not know for certain," Nova said. "But we have heard rumors about other groups like us. Groups that disappeared after their handlers took them away." A chill ran down Jake's spine. "Disappeared how?" "They were taken for additional integration support," Zara said, making air quotes. "None of them were ever seen again." Jake realized he was in way over his head. These women weren't just unusual house guests. They were refugees from another world, possibly being hunted by the very people who claimed to be protecting them. And somehow, he'd become their only real ally. "What do we do?" he asked. "We survive," Zara said, "and we try to figure out who we can trust." That night, Jake couldn't sleep at all. He kept thinking about everything he'd learned, trying to process the impossible truth. He was harboring alien refugees in his house, and somehow that felt like the most important thing he'd ever done. Around midnight, he heard a car pull up outside. Through his window, he saw Agent Davis getting out of her SUV again, but this time, she wasn't alone. There were 4 other people with her, all wearing the same dark suits. Jake's heart started pounding. This wasn't a routine check. Something was wrong. He crept upstairs to warn the women, but their rooms were empty. They were gone. Jake's heart was racing as he searched the empty bedrooms. The women's few belongings were gone, but there were no signs of a struggle. It was like they had simply vanished into thin air. He heard voices downstairs and crept to the top of the stairs to listen. Agent Davis was in his living room with her team, and they were not happy. "They're gone," one of the men said. "How did they know we were coming?" "They're more advanced than we thought," Agent Davis replied coldly. "Thompson might have warned them." Jake's blood ran cold. They suspected him. He needed to get out of there before they came upstairs to look for him. He quietly opened his bedroom window and climbed onto the roof. It was a stupid plan, but he didn't have any other options. He managed to climb down the old oak tree in his backyard and sneak away through his neighbor's yard. He didn't even know where the women were, and he had no way to contact them. He was walking down the street, trying to figure out his next move, when he heard a familiar voice. "Jake." He turned around and saw Zara standing in the shadows between 2 houses. She looked different somehow, more confident, less fragile than she had in his house. "Thank goodness you're okay," he said, rushing over to her. "I thought they got you." We sensed them coming, she said. We had to leave quickly. Where are the others? Safe. But we need to talk. There are things you need to know. She led him to an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. Inside, Lyra and Nova were waiting, along with about a dozen other people Jake had never seen before. They all had that same otherworldly quality as his house guests. Jake, Zara said, "It's time you learned the whole truth." They sat in a circle on the warehouse floor, and Zara began to speak. Her voice was different now, stronger, more authoritative, like she was finally dropping an act she'd been putting on. "We are not from your world," she said. "We come from a planet called Altara, in a star system very far from here. Our world was beautiful once, with cities that floated in the sky and oceans that glowed with natural light." Jake listened, trying to wrap his head around what he was hearing. "But our planet was attacked by a species called the Devourers. Consume everything, planets, stars, entire civilizations. They strip worlds of all their resources and leave nothing behind. That's horrible," Jake said. "We fought them for decades, but they were too powerful. In the end, we had to evacuate everyone we could. Some of us escaped to other worlds, but many of us came here to Earth." "Why Earth?" Nova spoke up. "Because humans are similar to us in many ways. We look alike. We think alike. We hoped we could blend in until we figured out our next move. The integration protocol was supposed to help us," Lyra added. "It was created by humans and Alterans working together. The idea was to place us with host families who would help us adjust to life on Earth. But something went wrong," Zara continued. "The program was taken over by people who saw us as opportunities rather than refugees. They started using us for experiments, trying to learn our abilities so they could weaponize them." "Abilities?" Jake asked. Zara held out her hand, and suddenly a small ball of light appeared in her palm. It was warm and comforting, like sunlight. "We can manipulate energy," she explained. "We can communicate without words, influence plant growth, predict weather patterns. These abilities helped us survive on Altera, but here they make us valuable to the wrong people." Jake stared at the light in her hand. "That's incredible. Agent Davis and her team work for a group that wants to use our abilities for military purposes," Nova said. "They've been taking refugees from their host families and conducting experiments on them." "What kind of experiments?" "They want to figure out how to give humans our abilities," Lyra said quietly. "They don't care if it hurts us in the process." Jake felt sick. "That's why you were scared of her." "We've lost many friends to their program," Zara said, the light in her hand flickering. "People who trusted the wrong humans and paid the price." "But not all humans are like that," said a new voice. Jake turned to see a woman in her 50s approaching their group. She had gray hair and kind eyes, and she was carrying a medical bag. "This is Dr. Chen," Zara said. "She's one of the good ones." Dr. Chen sat down with him. "I've been documenting what Davis's group has been doing. They've corrupted the integration protocol beyond recognition. What started as a humanitarian mission has become a nightmare."
"How long has this been going on?"
Jake asked. "The legitimate integration protocol has been operating since the 1960s, Dr. Chen explained. "We've successfully integrated thousands of Alteran refugees into human society. But about 5 years ago, a military faction took control of several regional offices. They've been using the refugees for their own purposes." "What can we do about it?" Jake asked. "We need evidence," Dr. Chen said. "Proof of what they're doing that we can present to the legitimate protocol leadership. But it's dangerous. Davis's group won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatens their operation." "I want to help," Jake said without hesitation. "Women trusted me, and I'm not going to let them down." Zara looked at him with surprise. "You would risk your safety for us?" "You're not just refugees," Jake said. "You're my friends. What they're doing is wrong." Over the next few hours, Dr. Chen explained the full scope of the conspiracy. Davis's group had been operating secret facilities where they conducted experiments on Alteran refugees. They were trying to reverse engineer Alteran abilities and create human super soldiers. "The worst part," Dr. Chen said, "is that they're planning something big. We've intercepted communications suggesting they want to stage a fake attack using stolen Alteran technology. They'll blame it on hostile aliens and use the panic to justify taking control of all alien-human relations. When Zara asked, soon, within the next few days, Jake felt overwhelmed. A few weeks ago, his biggest problem was paying off his student loans. Now he was part of an interplanetary conspiracy. What's the plan? He asked. We need to infiltrate one of their facilities and gather evidence, Dr. Chen said. But it's heavily guarded. We'll need someone on the inside. Do it, Jake said. Jake, no, Zara said immediately. It's too dangerous. The only one who can do it, he argued. Davis still thinks I'm just an innocent host family member. She doesn't suspect me yet. She won't. Once she realizes you're gone, Nova pointed. Out. Then we need to move fast, Dr. Chen said. There's a facility about an hour from here. If we can get inside and document what they're doing, we can expose the whole operation. As they planned their mission, Jake realized his life had completely changed. He was no longer just a regular guy with a boring job and too much debt. He was part of something bigger, something that mattered. Looking at Zara, Lyra, and Nova, he saw them differently now. They weren't mysterious house guests. They were survivors of an unimaginable tragedy, fighting to protect what was left of their people. And somehow, he'd become their ally. You ready for this? Zara asked him. Jake took a deep breath. I'm ready. But as they prepared to leave the warehouse, Jake heard the sound of vehicles approaching. Through the dirty windows, he could see black SUVs surrounding the building. They found us, Dr. Chen said grimly. Agent Davis's voice echoed through a megaphone. This is Agent Davis. The building is surrounded. Come out with your hands visible. Jake looked at his new friends and allies. They were trapped, outnumbered, and outgunned, but they still had one advantage. Davis didn't know what they were truly capable of. Time to see what Alteron refugees can really do, Zara said, her eyes beginning to glow with that same warm light. The real fight was about to begin. The warehouse suddenly filled with a bright, warm light as Zara and the other Alterons stood up together. Jake had to shield his eyes. It was like looking at a dozen small suns. Everyone stay calm, Zara said, but her voice sounded different. Stronger, more commanding. We're going to get out of here, but we need to work together. Agent Davis's voice came through the megaphone again. You have 30 seconds to surrender or we're coming in. Dr. Chen, Zara said quietly. Is there another way out of here? There's a loading dock in the back, Dr. Chen whispered. But they probably have it covered too. Jake's mind was racing. They were trapped, and Davis had enough firepower to level the building. But then he remembered something from his job at the tech company. Wait, he said. I might have an idea. This warehouse used to be owned by my company. There's an old maintenance tunnel system under these buildings. It connects to the storm drains. Can you find it? Nova asked. I think so, but we need a distraction. Zara looked at him with those glowing green eyes. What kind of distraction? Something that will make them think we're trying to escape through the front? The Alterans looked at each other, having one of their silent conversations. Then Lyra stepped forward. I can create illusions with light, she said. Make them see what we want them to see. Perfect, Jake said. Make it look like we're all running toward the main entrance. Meanwhile, we'll actually be going underground. Dr. Chen led them to a corner of the warehouse, where old machinery covered a rusted metal grate. Jake helped pry it open, revealing a narrow tunnel that smelled like years of dust and decay. This is going to be tight, he warned. Better than being captured, Zara said. Lyra closed her eyes and concentrated. Suddenly, Jake could see ghostly figures of light moving toward the front of the warehouse. They looked exactly like real people running. Outside, he heard Agent Davis shouting orders. They're making a break for it. Move in. The sound of boots and voices got louder as Davis's team stormed the front of the building. In the confusion, Jake and the others slipped into the tunnel system. Crawling through the tunnels was horrible. They were cramped, dirty, and filled with spider webs. But Jake kept thinking about what Dr. Chen had told them about the experiments. And that gave him the motivation to keep going. After what felt like hours, they emerged from a storm drain. About a mile away from the warehouse, they were all covered in dirt and grime, but they were free. That was brilliant, Dr. Chen said, catching her breath. But they'll realize we escaped soon enough. We need to move fast. Where do we go now? Jake asked. There's a safe house about 20 minutes from here, she said. Other members of the resistance use it. As they walked through the dark streets, Dr. Chen explained more about the conspiracy. The fake attack Davis's group was planning would happen at a major public event, a technology conference in the city center where thousands of people would be gathered. They're going to use stolen Alteron energy weapons to attack the conference, she said. Then they'll claim it was a hostile alien invasion. Panic will give them the excuse they need to take complete control of alien-human relations. Is this conference? Zara asked. Tomorrow? Jake felt his stomach drop. Tomorrow? That's not much time, which is why we need to act tonight, Dr. Chen said. We have to get into their main facility and gather evidence before they can execute their plan. The safe house turned out to be an ordinary-looking apartment building. Dr. Chen led them to a basement unit where several other people were waiting. Jake was surprised to see that half of them were human and half were Alteron. This is Commander Rodriguez, Dr. Chen said, introducing them to a serious-looking woman in her 40s. She's been leading the resistance against Davis's faction, Commander. Rodriguez looked Jake up and down. So you're the civilian who got caught up in all this? I guess I am, Jake said. Dr. Chen tells me you want to help. This isn't a game. People have died fighting these conspirators. I understand, Jake said, but I can't just walk away. Not. After everything I've learned, Commander Rodriguez nodded approvingly. Good. Because we need someone Davis doesn't suspect to get us inside their facility. She spread out blueprints on a table. This is their main research center. It's disguised as a pharmaceutical company, but underground they have laboratories, where they conduct experiments on Alteron refugees. Jake studied the blueprints. The facility was huge, with multiple levels underground and heavy security throughout. How do we get inside? He asked. You're going to walk through the front door, Commander Rodriguez said. Davis still thinks you're just an innocent host family member. You'll tell them you're worried about your house guests and you want to help find them. And then what? Once you're inside, you'll disable their security systems so our team can get in. We'll rescue any prisoners and gather evidence of what they've been doing. Zara stepped forward. I'm going with him. Absolutely not, Commander Rodriguez said. It's too dangerous. He'll need backup, Zara insisted. And I can use my abilities to help. If they capture you, they'll experiment on you, Dr. Chen warned. If we don't stop them, they'll experiment on all of us eventually, Zara replied. Jake looked at her. Are you sure about this? We're partners now, she said with a small smile. Partners don't abandon each other. They spent the next few hours planning every detail of the mission. Jake would go in first, posing as a concerned host family member. Zara would sneak in through a service entrance and meet him inside. Together, they would disable the security systems and open the way for the rescue team. Remember, Commander, Rodriguez said, we're not just trying to stop their fake attack. We're trying to save the integration protocol itself. There are thousands of Alteron refugees living peacefully with human families all over the world. If Davis succeeds, all of that will be destroyed. As dawn approached, Jake found himself sitting with Zara on the roof of the apartment building. Looking out at the city lights. Are you scared? She asked. Terrified, he admitted. A month ago, the scariest thing in my life was opening my credit card bills. I'm about to infiltrate a secret government facility to stop an alien conspiracy. You could still walk away, Zara said quietly. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is, Jake said. These people are trying to hurt my friends. That makes it my fight. Zara looked at him with something that might have been affection. Your planet produces some remarkable individuals. So does yours, Jake said. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun rise over the city. In a few hours, they would either be heroes or prisoners. But right now, in this moment, Jake felt oddly peaceful. Whatever happens today, he said, I'm glad I met you. I am glad I met you too, Jake Thompson, Zara said. You have given me hope that humans and Altarans can truly be allies. As they prepared to leave for the mission, Jake realized that his life would never be normal again. But maybe normal was overrated. Maybe fighting for something important was better than just existing. He was about to find out if he was brave. It's enough to save the world. The phone rang. Commander Rodriguez answered it, and her face went pale. They've moved up the timeline, she said grimly. The attack is happening in 6 hours, not tonight. If we're going to stop them, we have to move now. Jake looked at Zara. Ready? Ready? She said. They headed out into the morning light, knowing that the next few hours would determine the fate of 2 worlds. Jake's hands were shaking as he walked up to the front desk of what looked like a normal pharmaceutical company. Hi, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. I need to speak with Agent Davis. It's about my house guests. The receptionist's smile flickered for just a moment. 1 moment, please. She made a quick phone call, speaking too quietly for Jake to hear. Within minutes, Agent Davis appeared in the lobby, looking surprised to see him. Mr. Thompson, she said. What brings you here? I'm worried about the women, Jake said, sticking to the script he'd rehearsed. They disappeared from my house. Last night I thought maybe you could help me find them. Agent Davis studied his face carefully. Of course. Why don't you come upstairs and we can discuss this properly? As they rode the elevator up, Jake tried to look nervous and confused instead of terrified. He was wearing a small camera hidden in his shirt button, and he had a device in his pocket that Zara had given him to disable security systems. I just want to make sure they're safe, he said as they walked down a sterile white hallway. They seemed scared of something. I'm sure they're fine, Agent Davis said, but something in her tone made Jake's skin crawl. They probably just went to meet with other members of their community. She led him into an office with no windows. As soon as the door closed, her friendly mask dropped completely. Cut the act, Thompson, she said coldly. We know you helped them escape. Jake's heart started pounding, but he tried to look confused. I don't know what you're talking about, really. Then explain why your fingerprints were found in that warehouse. Jake realized they'd been tracking him somehow. He was blown, but he needed to buy time for Zara to get into position. Okay, fine, he said. I followed them one night because I was curious. But I don't know anything about whatever you think they're involved in. Agent Davis smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. Oh, I think you know much more than you're letting on. She pressed a button on her desk, and 2 guards entered the room. Take Mr. Thompson to holding room 3. We'll question him properly later. As the guards grabbed his arms, Jake activated Zara's device. Every screen in the office flickered and went dark. Emergency lights came on as the building's security system crashed. What did you do? Agent Davis demanded. Before Jake could answer, the lights in the hallway started exploding one by one, moving toward them like a wave. Zara was making her move. The guards dropped Jake and reached for their weapons, but suddenly they froze in place. Nova stepped out of the shadows, her eyes glowing softly. Nobody moves, she said calmly. Agent Davis backed against the wall. This is impossible. Can't be here. Humans always underestimate what we're capable of, Zara said, appearing in the doorway. Her whole body was glowing now, and Jake could feel the energy radiating from her. The building is surrounded, Agent Davis said. We'll never get out. We're not trying to get out, Zara replied. Trying to get in. Ira appeared next, and Jake realized the 3 women had been coordinating this whole time. We found the laboratory levels, she said. There are 17 of our people down there. Some of them are barely alive, Nova added, her voice filled with anger. Jake felt sick. What have you been doing to them? Research, Agent Davis said, trying to sound defiant. These creatures have abilities that could revolutionize warfare. We're unlocking their secrets for the good of humanity. By torturing refugees, Jake said. By protecting our species from a threat you can't comprehend. The only threat here is you, Zara said. She held out her hand, and Agent Davis's phone flew into her palm. Zara crushed it effortlessly. Commander Rodriguez and her team are already freeing the prisoners, Lyra said. But we still need to stop the attack at the conference. What attack? Agent Davis demanded, but her face had gone pale. The one you're planning to blame on hostile aliens, Jake said. We know everything. For the first time, Agent Davis looked genuinely frightened. You don't understand. There really are hostile forces out there. And your solution is to turn Earth into a military dictatorship? Nova asked. Our solution is to be prepared. Agent Davis snapped. These refugees are just the advanced scouts. Jake stared at her. You're insane. I'm a realist, she said. And you're a traitor to your own species. No, Jake said. I'm someone who knows the difference between refugees and invaders. Suddenly, alarms started blaring throughout the building. Commander Rodriguez's voice came through the emergency speakers. Attention all personnel. This facility is under lawful seizure by the legitimate integration protocol. Surrender now, and you will not be harmed. Through the office windows, Jake could see helicopters circling the building. The real authorities had arrived. It's over, Zara said to Agent Davis. But Agent Davis wasn't giving up. She lunged for a hidden panel in her desk and pulled out a strange-looking weapon that hummed with energy. If I can't stop the invasion, at least I can eliminate some of the advanced scouts, she said, aiming the weapon at Zara. Jake didn't think. He just moved, throwing himself between the weapon and Zara. The energy beam hit him in the chest, and everything went white. When he woke up, he was lying on a stretcher in what looked like a medical bay. Dr. Chen was standing over him, looking relieved. Welcome back, she said. You've been unconscious for 6 hours. Did we stop them? Jake asked weakly. We did. The attack was prevented. The prisoners were freed, and Agent Davis's entire operation has been shut down. What about Zara and the others? They're fine, Dr. Chen said. Thanks to you. That weapon was designed to be lethal to Alterans, but it only stunned you. Jake tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Oh, easy there, hero, came a familiar voice. Zara appeared beside his bed, looking tired but happy. You saved my life. We're partners, remember? Jake said with a weak smile. The legitimate integration protocol has taken control of all refugee operations, Dr. Chen explained. The refugees will be relocated to safe, willing host families. What happens now? Jake asked. Zara took his hand. The integration protocol will continue, but with proper oversight. Humans and Alterons will work together as equals. And the Devourers. That's a problem for another day, Zara said. But when they come, we'll face them together. Both species united. Over the next few weeks, Jake recovered from his injuries and watched as his world changed completely. The existence of Alteron refugees was revealed to the public, but in a careful, controlled way that emphasized their status as allies and victims, not threats. Some people were scared at first, but most were amazed by the technology and knowledge the Alterans brought with them. Lyra started working with agricultural scientists to improve crop yields. Nova joined a team of meteorologists to improve weather prediction, and Zara became an official liaison between the two species. Jake kept his house, but now he was an official integration protocol host, family coordinator. Zarlira and Nova chose to stay with him not because they had to, but because they wanted to. This is home now, Zara told him one evening as they sat on his porch watching the sunset. For all of us, Jake agreed. He thought about how much his life had changed. A few months ago, he'd been a lonely guy with money problems and no real purpose. Now he had a family that happened to include beings from another world, a job that actually mattered, and the knowledge that he'd helped save both species from those who would exploit them. Do you ever regret getting involved in all this? Zara asked. Jake looked at her, then at Lyra tending to his garden, which was now producing vegetables that shouldn't have been able to grow in this climate. Nova was inside, helping him understand. Some new technology that would make his job easier? Never, he said. This is the best thing that ever happened to me. Even though your life will never be normal again? Jake laughed. Normal is overrated. Besides, I've got the best roommates in the galaxy. As the stars came out, Jake realized that somewhere up there, other refugees might be looking for safe harbor. And when they arrived, Earth would be ready to welcome them properly. The integration protocol had survived its first major test, stronger than before. And Jake Thompson, ordinary guy turned interplanetary hero, was exactly where he belonged. At home with his chosen family, ready for whatever came next.